So the sixth presidential Democratic debate took place last night at Loyola Marymount University in California. This debate was moderated by PBS NewsHour reporters as well as reporters from Politico, and there was, a number of topics that were touched on during the debate: impeachment, nuclear weapons, tax cuts, immigration, Israel, Palestine, and a number of other things that I will talk about in this video. So I watched the whole debate and I took notes throughout on the different questions and the responses from the candidates. So I will go over those, and then after that I will rate how I thought each candidate did. So the first question that the moderators asked the panel of candidates was about impeachment and how the country seems to be divided, and how would they get more people to get behind the impeachment of Donald Trump. And the first respondent was Joe Biden, who talked about restoring integrity and how Putin supports Donald Trump. So yeah, just kind of weird non sequitur answer from Joe Biden, but we have come to expect that from crazy Uncle Joseph, at least I have. And then Bernie was next. He said that Trump was a pathological liar. Trump was very corrupt. He was fraudulent towards the working class of the United States, who he told, they were going to bring the jobs back, which hasn't happened. He's also, sold out working families. He wants to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And then up next was Elizabeth Warren, who talked about constitutional oath, corruption, that Trump was the most corrupt president in living history in the United States. Trump didn't drain the swamp. The economy is working well for, well-connected people, and she would fight for, everybody else who has been left behind. After Warren, it was Amy Klobuchar. President's not king, law is, in reference to, I guess, James Madison. Trump has betrayed the trust. He's called foreign leader for dirt in reference to, Ukraine and the Bidens. Why not have top people testify if there's nothing to hide during, the impeachment trial? And Buttigieg, got to move beyond politics. Don't give in to helplessness. Giant corporations are paying no taxes. It's up to us in 2020. Reject cynicism. So kind of more like milquetoast, neoliberal centrist, talking points. Tom Steyer, he started the movement to impeach Trump 2 years ago. A petition that he started has over 8.5 million signatures. And he wants Trump and his cabal to testify so the American people can judge. And then it was Andrew Yang who talked about, the media networks have a part to play in this because of all, I think, the attention that they gave to Donald Trump in the run-up to the 2016 election. And Yang talked about how the U.S. has lost 4 million manufacturing jobs, and that he pointed out Trump was not the cause of all the problems, which I definitely agree with. And out of those answers, I think probably Sanders, Warren, and Yang probably gave the best responses, in my opinion. Next question was, the economy seems to do really well. How would you, fight back against Trump when the economy appears to be doing well? And I have a problem with the framing of this question by the moderators because, yes, the economy, if you're just looking at, let's say, like the stock market, seems to be doing really well, but who benefits from doing that? It's the wealthy and the big corporations. And yeah, maybe the unemployment rate looks high, but a lot of people are working in low-wage paying jobs with no benefits, or they're part of the gig economy, or they have stopped looking for jobs. Poverty rates, really high. People are shackled with huge amounts of debt. Housing keeps going up. Wages are stagnant. So the economy is not really doing good unless you're, at the top. So I definitely had a problem with the framing of that question. And then they asked Bernie about the USMCA, the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, so kind of NAFTA 2.0. Bernie talks about how he voted against NAFTA in the first place, as well as normalized trade relations with China. And he says that this USMCA would be a small improvement because it would allow people or workers in Mexico to unionize, but doesn't have anything about farmers or workers beyond that. And climate wasn't discussed at all in the USMCA, even though it's a huge, existential threat, as Bernie likes to point out. And then up next to respond was Amy Klobuchar, who said that she would support the USMCA, better standards, and then she starts talking about stuff made in America, hopes, dreams of American people. And then at one point during her response, she closed her eyes like that, which I felt was just kind of interesting, and I took note of it. And then Pete Buttigieg, he was talking about people sitting down at their kitchen table and writing their bills out in their checkbook, and talking about the middle class and poor people. Biggest problem, he says, people aren't getting paid enough. He wants to raise wages. And then Andrew Yang was next. He talked about, people needing to work 2 to 3 jobs to get by. And then Warren, people not getting the benefits from, these huge, massive corporate profits, record corporate profits that we're seeing. She wants the government to work for the people, not just the, Wall Street and huge corporations. And, there's a lot of corruption going on, pure and simple. And then Sanders came in again. Wages are only up 1.1% in the last year. There's high rates of wealth inequality. We have over 500,000 homeless people in the United States. A good chunk of them are also military veterans, which he points out. Child poverty. He wants an economy that works for working families and not just the 1%. Out of everybody's response there, I definitely rate Bernie's as the highest. He brings it back to a power and a class struggle, and I just think that's really important, and he did a great job, in my opinion, on that economic question. And then, so the next question that the moderators asked was about, what if we cut taxes? There's some economists out there that have said if we cut taxes, we'll stifle the economic growth and investment in our economy. They didn't sound like that, but I'm just trying to differentiate my voice a little bit to point out neoliberal centrist talking points when I see them. So that's what that was. And so first to respond was Elizabeth Warren, and she says, no, we can in fact raise taxes and do a lot of good things when we do that, and it's not going to stifle anything. She talks about being able to fund universal preschool, which most developed countries already have, which of course we don't. Raising wages, canceling student loan debt, invest in early childhood. And then, so I put in parentheses, long-winded response. She kind of kept going on, and that's kind of a theme I noticed from her responses throughout the debate. What could have been said in like a paragraph, she adds like another 1 or 2 paragraphs. So just maybe some thoughts going forward, maybe make it a little more concise. Tom Steyer, he wants to undo the wealthy tax rates, or all the tax cuts that have from Bush and then Trump as well. He built a business, growth and justice. Go toe-to-toe with Trump, expose him as a fraud and a failure. It's like, that's going about it totally the wrong way, using the wrong language. You and your billion-dollar campaign, drop out and do something else with your life. You're not helping us. Pete Buttigieg, got to be smart about our promises. And I put centrist talking point. And this is where he goes after free college. We can use money for other stuff. We don't need to be sending the children of millionaire to college for free. They can pay the tuition for themselves. No, we need a universal program, you neoliberal centrist goon, because by having a universal program has a lot more political staying power because it benefits everybody. Everybody pays in, everybody benefits, and it's more than likely that those children of millionaires aren't even going to, attend public colleges. They're more likely to attend private schools. So there's another reason, like, that you're just a neoliberal centrist goon, Pete Buttigieg. And then the next question was on climate change, and would the candidate support funding, relocating people and communities out of certain areas that would be impacted by climate change. Klobuchar was first. She would support money for relocation. Climate change is an existential crisis. She talked about watching some video of people driving by a wildfire that was really impactful to her, I guess. Can't wait to act. Used this Native American quote about thinking 7 generations out. That was kind of interesting. Rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement, gas standards, but no mention of a Green New Deal. So I put question mark, why didn't she talk about that? So I don't think she supports that, which is a little troubling, but not surprising coming from her. And then Steyer, got to declare a state of emergency. Climate's our number one priority. Environmental justice, take it on oil companies, union jobs, lead coalition. Only the U.S. can lead. Gotta prioritize it more. And then Buttigieg, he's talking about how in Indiana he lives by a river, his house flooded. Gotta use a carbon tax, summon energies in the U.S., but again, no talk of a Green New Deal. And then, let's see, Biden would support funding the relocation, transition to higher paying jobs, green building tax cuts, invest in solar, small batteries, charging stations, open up electric vehicle market. But again, no talk of a Green New Deal. There's larger kind of systemic issues around climate change. Seems like the more centrist neoliberal candidates, just obviously want to tweak around the edges, and that definitely applies to climate change as well. This is perfect from Bernie. So he says, the question misses the mark. The issue is that we got to save the planet for the future generations. Paris Climate Agreement isn't enough. Perfect, Bernie. Perfect response. We got to lead the world. Less, and this is really important, less money for war, and use that to fight climate change. Boom. Bernie, again, nails it on the head. He's best response on impeachment, the economy, and then now on climate change. So 3 out of 3 so far for Bernie, in my opinion. And then next question was on nuclear energy, and if the candidate supported that or not. And the first respondent was Elizabeth Warren. She wants to keep some nuclear energy in place, but no new nuclear reactors would be created. We gotta innovate. Politicians and Washington's need to change. Climate change threatens the globe, attacking corruption, and not a good response from Elizabeth Warren. This is again another reason I wouldn't support her. Is like, you can't support nuclear energy. It's horrible for the environment. It creates radioactive waste that devastates the communities that surround it from all of the horrible pollution and waste and the chance of a nuclear meltdown. It's like, nope, not good, Elizabeth. Klobuchar, gotta talk about the Midwest. I live there. It's not flyover country. You gotta win big by, nominating somebody that lives there. So, total non-answer. Let's see. And then Yang would help with relocation, moving people to higher ground. He says nuclear is on the table. There's a strike against you, Andrew Yang. Talks about thorium reactors, so he's, pretty on board with nuclear power. Steyer, It sounds like he's against it, so I'll give him kudos for that. The risk related he talked about, as well as you can't store the nuclear toxins. Got to focus on wind, solar, and batteries. So, Steyer, pretty good response there. Out of all these responses on nuclear energy so far, I would say Steyer was the best. And then let's see. Oh, and then so the one of the moderators asked a question about how Joe Biden was talking about, once Trump was out of office, Republicans would come to their senses and be more rational and be able to, work in a bipartisan way with Democrats. And then so Biden says, normal is not enough. Can cooperate and reach consensus. Don't need to love Republicans, but we need to get stuff done. And then the question was for Angie Yang. How did he feel about being the only person of color on stage, and what message did that send? He talked about the racial wealth gap, the racial disproportionalities with infant, death rates. Talked about UBI and how MLK supported it, and that if there was UBI in place, he thought there would be more people of color on stage because I guess it takes money to run a campaign or something like that. And then Bernie, relates climate change back to racial justice and how people of color are more likely to be affected by climate change. He also talked about criminal justice reform and how the economy needs to work for the working people and not just the 1%. Pretty good responses by Yang and Bernie there. Definitely much better than Biden's question. And then the next question from the moderator, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right, Yamishi Al-Sindor. It was about, what if racial minorities become the numerical majority in the United States? And answering that first was Klobuchar. So it's talked about making sure everyone can vote, voter suppression, automatic voter registration, stopping gerrymandering. So pretty decent response by Klobuchar, I think. Those are all things I definitely support. And then the next question was for Bernie. It was around foreign policy and, the expansion of the illegal Israeli settlements. Would he, would aid be on the table as, kind of a bargaining chip with the Israeli government? He talked about he was Jewish. Israel has a right to exist in peace and security, but this is really important. We have to take a pro-Palestinian stance as well. And he talked about how, Netanyahu is racist. He was indicted. We got to level the playing field, and that how, there's 60 to 70% unemployment in, Palestine or Gaza, and, it's a huge human rights question. So, again, just in foreign policy, Bernie Sanders has the best handle of it on any Democratic candidate, in my opinion. And then Buttigieg talked about how Trump welcomes white nationalists to the White House. The world's ignoring us. And then he talked about, that last meeting where it's the Trudeau and Macron and I think one other world leader were kind of talking behind Trump's back and making some funny faces at him. And the U.S. was disrespected, and we got to work towards peace, democracy, and human rights. And then so the moderators moved on to Guantanamo Bay. Would we close it? How? Yes. Warren says yes. It's an international embarrassment. Need to live our values. Who are we supporting? Our allies or dictators? We got to treat our allies better. We have the finest military on earth, which her voting record represents because I believe she voted for Trump's first 2 or 3 military budgets and then focus on diplomacy. And then let's see. And then they asked Biden, why weren't you and Obama able to get Gitmo closed? And then he didn't really answer it. He said Israel, two-state solutions mandatory. And then that Bibi Netanyahu, I guess he's still currently the prime minister of Israel while they've kind of figured out that process in the Knesset. Bibi knows that Joe knows that he thinks he's outrageous, but the aid is not on the table. So again, no accountability for the, human rights violations of the Israeli government against the Palestinian people. So another strike against Biden there. And then this question was by Judy Woodruff. About China and their treatment of the Uyghur Muslims there. Would we boycott the Olympics potentially? Buttigieg answered first. He said any tools on the table. Got to have a smarter trade policy in relation to China. We got to be worried about their technology that they're using for their dictatorship. And Trump not talking about, not talking about Chinese communists or something. I don't know. And then the next question was about Hong Kong. It was first directed to Tom Steyer. Says we're not the world police. We got to lead with our values, work with China as a frenemy, partner with Chinese under all circumstances. So that's, a little interesting. I don't necessarily know if we need to partner with them under all circumstances, but finding a way to work with them while also holding them accountable for their human rights abuses, I think gotta strike some middle ground there. And then let's see, they another right-wing framed question from Judy Woodruff. She talked about how China was launching aircraft carriers. Are we on a disturbing collision course? Let's devote more money to the military. China has one aircraft carrier. We got to escalate. That's kind of the framing of that question, in my opinion. So Joe Biden responded first, not war, but there are Uyghur concentration camps. We got to move sea power over there. Build alliances with South Korea, Japan. I think he said Australia too. UN sanctions firm. We're holding you firm, China. Don't go any further. We're holding you firm, but we won't go to war. We'll send aircraft carriers over there. We're holding you firm. We're not going to war. That was my Joe Biden. And then Andrew Yang talked about what was happening in Hong Kong was shocking. They're using AI to identify protesters. China's leapfrogged the U.S. in AI. China is making their own smartphones or something. Technology standards. Klobuchar, we got to keep promises and our threats. Trump stands with dictators. Trump thin skin. He quits. U.S. doesn't quit. We don't quit. Check out our website. Let's return to sanity. There's nothing wrong with meeting with world leaders or so-called dictators to, try to find some common ground and work towards peace and diplomacy. That's a good thing, Amy Klobuchar. Get your facts straight. Buttigieg, Trump echoing dictators, something on freedom of the press and some other word salad. And then this question was from Tim Alberta of Politico about President Obama's comment that, if women, ran the world, it would be a lot better place, basically, and old men need to get out of the way. And first Bernie answered the issue, which is, he had another great answer from Bernie. He talked about the issue is where does power reside. Currently, it's with the oligarchy and the billionaires buying politicians. That we need Medicare for all. We need to take climate change seriously. The issue is working people standing up. Boom, perfect. And then Biden said, "What? Obama wasn't talking about me. Low. Let's unite America." And then I wrote that he went on to some weird foreign policy rant. Yes, Joe. Well, Joe, I mean, maybe he was talking about you. He hasn't came out and endorsed you, has he? Maybe he thinks you need to get out of the way so he can elect Bernie. No, I don't really think he thinks that, but it'd be cool if he did. And then he talks about, he mentions Winston Churchill, and then the moderators have to correct him, like, oh, no, that's actually not a U.S. leader, Joe. But then Joe said, oh, it was just a joke. It was a joke. And then I wrote gaff exclamation point. And then they asked him if Biden would commit to serving 2 presidential terms. He wouldn't, which, is fine. That doesn't seem to be a real huge issue. Klobuchar then answered, need more women in government. That's true. I agree. We need more progressive women in government. Got to bring in the rural voters, the Midwest. She passed bills with both parties, and then I wrote how she's just wearing a purple outfit. I took note of that for some reason. And then Elizabeth Warren then responded. Obama was talking about power. How are people running their campaigns? Proud of her campaign. This is a theme that went throughout her answers. Is she kept talking about selfies, and in this response she said that she has taken over 100,000 selfies, and then talked about selfies are free. Rich people are donating to other candidate, and then I put rambles ... So I definitely think that was how are people running campaign was directed towards Pete Buttigieg. And then so he responds, that seemed like that was directed at me. This is the fight of our lives. And then just wrote he was justifying, sketchy campaign donations. Don't tie one hand behind her back. We're not going to turn away anyone. Then I wrote courting, big money donors, which he definitely is and has. And then Warren claps back, about the wine cave where they had a high dollar fundraiser somewhere in California recently, and they had $900 bottles of wine there. The fundraiser was closed doors. And then Warren says, billionaires in wine caves shouldn't pick our president. That's pretty good response there by Elizabeth Warren. Kudos. And then Pete Buttigieg says, I'm not wealthy. Warren, your wealth is 100 times more than mine. Need support from everyone to defeat Trump. And then Warren says, I don't sell access. I don't meet with big donors in private. If you can't, this is really good, I thought. If you can't stand up as a candidate, how would you as prez? Boom. Boom. And then Buttigieg responds, his campaign is, or is some note I made, funded by wealthy companies, or no, she was talking, or Buttigieg says that, I guess during her Senate re-election campaign, she transferred some of those funds over that were from big money fundraisers to her presidential campaign. And then he talked about purity tests not being good, so he's in favor of legalized corruption or bribery of these high money donors, and he's very clear on that, which is very troubling. And then Klobuchar talks about campaign finance reform and overturning Citizens United. That's definitely a step in the right direction, and that we need to unite. And Bernie says, he's the only candidate who hasn't taken any billionaire money, which is true, as well as his campaign has the most individual donations in U.S. history at around 4 million, I believe. And then he talks about how 44 billionaires have donated to Joe, and 39 have donated to Pete Buttigieg, so calling them out by name for their billionaire support. That's pretty awesome. And then he talks about how 3 people in the United States, their wealth is greater than the bottom, 50%, and that we just need to get money completely out of politics. Perfect. Bernie, on point again. And then Biden says he's not in the pockets of billionaires. His fundraisers are open, but you got to fund a campaign. So again, kind of justifying it. Steyer then answered, fighting corporations, Trump different breed, got to take on the economy, got to fight corruption, fraud, and Trump is a failure. Immigration, DACA, would you, make that more permanent? Would you give, everybody, permanent, citizenship basically that are here? Yang says yes. And then you also got to have strong men and female leaders. Too many men equals, I guess, dumb government, basically. Um, let's see. Talked about automation and that he was, the son of immigrant parents. And then, yes, Bernie says he supports, DACA. No more baby snatching. Got to pass some bipartisan immigration reform, pathway for citizenship for everyone. Good job, Bernie. Bring people together. Klobuchar talked about how she worked on immigration reform with Obama. She had user experience. Steyer. Divide us on race. That's vilifying. We need to reframe the argument, and we have a racist president. Let's see. And then the question was about, these children, these families that have been separated at the border. Would the candidates be in support of some type of financial compensation for those families? Buttigieg said yes to more obligation. His family immigrated, or his dad immigrated here. There's some type of Latino influence in South Bend, supports HR 40, so I believe that's the reparations bill, or the bill that would look into what reparations would look like and research that. Talked about minority business investments, and then Biden talked about, it's kind of weird, the United States cherry picks people from each continent, the best people to bring here. Immigrants are the future of the U.S. Why? Because it's who we are. Let's see, but he didn't really answer that question if he would support, those funds. Klobuchar, Pete not doing anything. Experience works. We gotta respect our experience, because earlier on in the video, or in the debate, Buttigieg had made some type of dig at the candidates being kind of these, I guess, career politicians, and so that was Klobuchar kind of clapping back at that, saying that her experience is actually important. And then Buttigieg says, I'm close with the First Amendment. I was a soldier. I sworn in. And then Klobuchar said that we need to build a winning coalition. And then Buttigieg talked about that he was a gay man in Mike Pence's Indiana, and he still was able to get elected. And then Bernie, again, knocks it out of the park, talks about we need to have, record high voter turnouts to beat Trump. We got to create energy and excitement, which his campaign definitely is doing, in my opinion. Got to take on the owner class, the working class does. We got to support Medicare for all, a livable wage, focus on climate change because it's a huge threat to free college, and canceling all student debt. Again, Bernie, another the best response out of everybody. And then this is another, I wrote RWF for right-wing framing of a question. Should wealthy families also get free college? Elizabeth Warren talks about her wealth tax, canceling student loan debt, and I put some in there because that's all her plan does. We got to look to our values, invest in the futures. And she talked about hearing things during the selfie lines. And then, let's see. And then it was to Buttigieg asking, if the more progressive free college platforms were going too far. He said, yes, the rich people got to pay your own tuition. If you're in the top 10%, you should be okay. You can pay that. It's like, no, the universality of it's super important, Pete Buttigieg. Everybody pays in, so everybody benefits. Everybody benefits. Get over it. And then Warren talked about student loan debt being a huge burden and the racial component of that, and it would open up education to more people. And Bernie, boom, knocks out of the park again. He talked about universality, getting rid of the paperwork of, financial aid and this and this and that. So it's awesome. We got to have a revolution in education, affordable childcare, free college, tax billionaires, Wall Street, cancel all student loan debt. He's the only one, I believe, advocating for that. As I said, Elizabeth Warren only wants a certain percentage to be able to do that. And then another question from Tim Alberta from Politico. Talks about jobs for people with disabilities and how do you integrate that and make sure there's more jobs for them to get. Steyer says we can afford to do that by undoing the wealthy and the corporate tax cuts to fund that. Yang talked about how we need to do more for special needs children, and he said that he himself, his family has a special needs child. And this is actually a really good response from him. I'll give him credit here. He said, don't confuse economic value with human value. And then he talks about his freedom dividend, or the UBI, and making it this issue a federal priority. Elizabeth Warren then responded, talked about how she was a special education teacher, fully funding the IDA, or the individual